Hi, I'm Martin from Reedsy, and over the past 10 years, we've helped over 200,000 writers become authors, and today, I'm going to break down the three-act structure with a little help from my friend, Rocky Balboa. So, wrap up your fists and let's get ready to rumble. Before we start, a quick promise. There are no hard and fast rules about writing, only what works. What I'm going to show you is something that has worked for a lot of stories across a lot of cultures for a very long time. I'm going to talk about it as if it's definitive, purely so I don't have to go, you could do this and you could do that every 12 seconds. If you want to do it another way, you absolutely can. But this framework is very useful to understand why stories feel satisfying when they work, and a little bit confusing and disappointing when they don't. Okay, I'm going to do a little history lesson on the three-act structure. If this is in your bag, then feel free to skip ahead to the next section where I break things down beat by beat. The idea that all stories have a beginning, middle, and end go all the way back to Aristotle. You know, Taylor Swift's friend. Way back in ancient Greece, Aristotle wrote a treatise called Poetics, which is the oldest remaining work of dramatic and literary theory. In this work, he observed how audiences reacted in the Greek theatre. What about the already legendary works of playwrights like Euripides and Sophocles and Aeschylus made an audience lean forward? What made their tragedies and comedies land? In it, he describes dramatic works, a whole that is which has a beginning, a middle, and an end. This is all a bit cryptic, but I think it refers to how a story is a self-contained entity, much like a little terrarium here. Everything required to understand a story is contained within. Aristotle, Taylor Swift's friend, emphasized this idea of causality. What happens as a story is as a result of something that happened, which itself is a result of something that happened before. Stories must be chains of cause and effects, not a deluge of random events. Boy meets girl, boy turns out to be a mafia don, girl gets abducted by aliens, and there's a wrestling match, and so on and so on and so on. So, Aristotle, Taylor Swift's friend, and the causality of events that are at the center of a story. Like cooking meat on a stick, this type of storytelling is not uniquely Greek. You'll find this type of storytelling in civilizations all across the world over centuries and centuries. Fast forward a couple thousand years, and a Hollywood screenwriter named Syd Field codifies these ancient ideas for modern stories. He divides a story into three acts: setup, confrontation, and resolution. And the reason why there are three phases? It sort of mirrors how human beings tackle problems and teach lessons to one another. 1, here's the situation. 2, here's the struggle. And 3, here's the solution and what you can learn from it all. And, I'm going to make a bold claim, I believe that almost every story can be mapped onto this shape. Not because most writers are unoriginal and want to use a cookie-cutter approach to telling stories, but because this is simply the shape of a story. And stories are shaped this way because that is how humans relate to one another. Okay, here's the version we'll use today. 3 acts, each with 3 of its own sections, phases, or beats. And to make it concrete, we're going to walk through all of it using the example of 1976 Academy Award Best Picture winner, Rocky. Rocky is perfect for this. It's simple, it's emotional, but under the bonnet, it's doing a lot of structural work. Exposition, the ordinary world. A story starts by showing us a life before it changes. It's sometimes called the ordinary world. It's where we get to meet the protagonists as they are now, before the story gets hold of them. It's Dorothy in Kansas, Luke Skywalker on the farm, or James Bond in an opening sequence where he's doing spy stuff and seducing lovely ladies, as is ordinary for a spy.
A woman?
The ordinary world is important because stories aren't about events. It's about how people are changed by events. So in the ordinary world, we want to know who is this person, what do they want, and what's missing from their life. In Rocky, we open on a small-time boxer in Philadelphia. Rocky Balboa fights nobodies in rundown gyms. To make ends meet, he collects debts for a local gangster and can't even bring himself to break a guy's thumb, as the boss told him to. He's kind-hearted, he's awkward, he's invisible. He also has a crush on Adrian, a meek woman who works in a local pet shop. And we immediately understand the emotional engine of the story. Rocky wants to be someone, and not just a bum. Inciting incident. Opportunity knocks. This is where something happens, the catalyst that sets the story in motion. It doesn't have to be a catastrophe. There can be, but doesn't need to be, an element of danger. The inciting incident is merely the moment where your character is being told your life could change. It's Bilbo Baggins being invited to join the dwarves on an adventure. It's Tony Stark being captured by misunderstood freedom fighters at the beginning of Iron Man. In Rocky, world heavyweight champion Apollo Creed has an opponent drop out of a championship fight that he has planned for America's bicentennial. Where one door closes, another opens, and Creed decides to stage a patriotic spectacle where he'll give a nobody from Philadelphia a shot at the world title. And that nobody is Rocky. This moment puts a door in front of him, but will he step through it? Would you? Plot point 1. Should I stay or should I go? Now comes the first real turn. Your protagonist has a choice to make. Do they go on this journey or do they stay where they are? Now, this is a story, so the answer is almost always yes, otherwise there wouldn't be a story and it ends there. There's no way that Katniss Everdeen simply waves goodbye to her little sister as she's being taken away to the Hunger Games, instead of taking her place. This is also the moment that emphasizes the stakes of the story. It shows the reader what the hero has to lose with their choice. Apollo Creed's promoter brings Rocky in and offers him the fight. Rocky knows he'll probably lose. He knows he'll be embarrassed. But he's offered $150,000, which in the 70s would allow him to buy as many black hats and rubber balls as he likes. This is an interesting dilemma for Rocky. He wants the money, but as we know from the ordinary world phase, he needs his dignity even more. So Rocky says yes, and that's plot point 1, we're off to the races, there's no turning back now. Now this is usually the point where someone chimes in and says, oh, so what? Everyone's supposed to be writing the same story, following the same recipe and baking the same cake? Well, yes and no. You wouldn't walk into a world-class bakery and go like, well, what's that you got there? A cake made of eggs and flour with 2 tiers? You hacks, before kicking in the display cabinet and getting frosting all over your flip-flops. Structure isn't the story, it's just the framework that holds it together, just as you need every cake to be solid and edible. What makes every story feel different is voice, character, detail, point of view, theme, and most of all, it's about the specificity that you as the writer can bring to it. Thousands of people can write a steamy romance set in the world of professional hockey, but only one can write heated rivalry, he says, hoping this reference doesn't age this video too soon. So yes, the 3-act structure isn't a recipe, it's just a blueprint for how stories work. Rising action, getting stronger. So now Rocky has said yes, there's a ticking clock, there's 5 weeks for him to get ready for this championship fight. This is where the story gets interesting. Similar to the fun and games section of the Save the Cat method, the rising action is the thing that your reader should be most excited to read. Movie trailers are mostly made up of scenes from the rising action, as that is where the promise of the story is usually delivered. Your hero accrues small wins, they encounter roadblocks that they usually overcome and become stronger in the process. Think about the Blues Brothers, slowly putting the band back together.
We're putting the band back together.
While facing up against the rednecks and nationalist socialists from Illinois. When you're writing this, think about what your hero needs to do to achieve their aims, what will stand in the way, and how they will grow from every encounter. In Rocky, this is the most famous section of the film. Our hero starts to train, but he doesn't have a conventional trainer, roadblock, so he has to make do using sides of beef as punching bags, small win. He is approached by the trainer at the gym he frequents, but Rocky doesn't trust him. Mickey has not shown much interest in helping him before, roadblock. But after talking it out, Rocky gives Mick a chance, just as he's been given a chance. He now has a coach, win. At the same time, Rocky starts dating Adrian, and she is charmed by his sweet nature, win. But this puts him slightly at odds with her overprotective deadbeat brother Paulie, roadblock. So in this phase, Rocky grows physically stronger, emotionally braver, and more confident. He goes from someone who struggles to run up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Arts to the most famous man who ever ran up the steps to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Midpoint, a gut punch. Then we hit the midpoint. This is a setback like the others, but this one hits differently. To use boxing parlance, is a 1-2 of a win that also comes with a price. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy arrives at the Emerald City to discover that the wizard is an absolute letdown.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
In Star Wars, Luke saves the princess, but loses his mentor in the process. At this point, something usually goes horribly wrong, something that just can't be shaken off. we are reminded of the stakes of the story and the real cost of what our heroes are trying to accomplish. The gut punch has to be big, but it doesn't have to be explosive. Sometimes an inner wound is just as profound. The night before the match, Rocky nervously visits the arena and sees a poster of himself wearing the wrong color shorts. He brings it up to the organizer, who reminds him that
it doesn't really matter, does it?
This hits Rocky where it hurts. His body is much stronger than before, but is his spirit and self-esteem tough enough? The rising action saw our hero encounter roadblocks that he could overcome, but with the midpoint, they find one that just might be a bridge too far. Without something changing in themselves, they can proceed no further. Plot point 2. A new understanding. Your poor protagonist has hit rock bottom. They thought they were making progress on their goal, but then the midpoint came and it threw them off their game. So give them some time to reflect on the story's real conflict here. We're at another crossroads, just as we were with plot point 1. Your character must choose. They must make some change or discover some truth about themselves, or they have to give up entirely. Think of plot point 2 as a pep talk that your character needs before they can finally face up to their antagonist. Rocky confesses to Adrian that he does not believe he can win, and that his confidence is at an all-time low. Adrian listens and says that she believes in him. Rocky sets out his new goal, to go the distance against Creed, to not be knocked out, which no other fighter has ever done. At this point, the hero learns something about himself. He thought he wanted to win and beat the champ, but what he really needs isn't a belt. He needs to prove that he's somebody that deserves respect and love. In stories, we often talk about wants and needs. This is the point where your character realizes that what they want isn't what they need. And this new understanding of what they need is what will help them through to the end. Pre-Climax. The final test begins. Act 3 is where everything you've set up gets paid off, and it's almost always the shortest of the acts. Your hero steps into the arena, literal or metaphorical, and your reader wonders whether the changes they've undergone are enough. This is where they, and we, the reader, get a sense of the antagonist's true strength. But it's also their first chance to see what our hero's made of. It's the big fight. Creed is overconfident, showboating. Taking advantage of this, Rocky knocks him down, showing the champ what he's made of. Creed's never been knocked down. So begins the marathon slugfest. It becomes clear that the fight is between two things: Creed's skill and power, and Rocky's heart and his ability to absorb punishment like Homer in that one episode of The Simpsons. Ideally, in a story, the stakes will continue to rise, and as your hero gets closer and closer to achieving their goal, they're also closer and closer to potential failure. The Rocky at the start of the story had no chance of beating Creed. But with his training, his personal development, and his newfound understanding of his true goal, there's a chance that he just might. We know this is a movie, and there's almost no way our hero's gonna completely fail. But in order for there to be this profound impact, there has to be a 50-50 chance. Climax. The question is answered. This is what it's all been building up to, the final moments of our story's overarching conflict. Will our hero get what they want? Will they get what they need? As the final bell sounds, both fighters remain on their feet. Rocky hasn't won the title, but he has gone the distance. The crowd goes wild. As the ring floods with officials and fans, petulantly, Creed tells Rocky,
"Ain't gonna be no rematch."
but Rocky replies,
"Don't want one."
As the Rolling Stones said, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you might find that you can be somebody that's worthy of being loved. Denouement. What does it all mean? This final beat is where the dust settles. Heroes get their prize, villains get their comeuppance. Along with this, the denouement can fulfill any promises made to the reader, tie up significant loose ends, it can underscore the theme of the story, and it can release the tension that has been built up through this entire journey. In some stories, they'll cut to 6 months after the climax to show you where everybody's at and how they've been changed by the events of the story. The denouement for Rocky lasts maybe 30 seconds. The fight is extremely well received by the sportscasters and the audience. Rocky calls out repeatedly for Adrian, who runs down to the ring, having told Rocky she couldn't bear watching the fight in person. As Creed is declared the winner by split decision, Rocky and Adrian embrace and profess their love for one another, not caring about the outcome of the fight. This emotional final beat is arguably more powerful than if he'd won the fight. In this denouement, Rocky finally gets what he needs: pride, self-respect, and the love of someone who loves him back. As I said at the beginning, this isn't the only way to tell a story, but I suspect that if you go into some of your favorite books and start taking them apart, many of them will fit into this framework. And even if you're not sold on it, here are a few questions from this whole process that anybody can apply to their story. What does your first act really set up? Where does your hero make their first big decision? What big obstacle do they run into in the middle? What do they learn about themselves and the world? And in the end, what does it all mean? And with that comes the end of the denouement of this video. If you like this, please remember to like and subscribe for more content about writing and publishing. Alright champ, give 'em hell.